the price of new vehicles. The average sticker price of a new vehicle reached $39,500 in the first half of this year. This is simply out of reach for many American families. The current trajectory of the standards is one of the factors driving costs higher. In order to comply with the Obama standards, automakers need to sell many more electric vehicles. By some counts, they will need to produce lineups that are 50% electric or more over the next 7 years. However, electric vehicles cost $12,000 more to make than the average vehicle, according to McKinsey analysis. Those costs are passed on to the consumers, which is one reason why electric vehicles are still, despite billions of dollars in subsidies, less than 2% of new vehicle sales. But one way for automakers to meet the standards is to lower the price of electric vehicles and raise the price of other more popular vehicles such as SUVs and trucks. In other words, American families are paying more for SUVs and trucks so that automakers can sell EVs at a cheaper price. It's one thing for the American public to directly subsidize electric vehicles through tax incentives. It's another thing to use the nation's vehicle emission standards to prop up a product that has minimal impact on the environment and only the wealthy can afford. Of the roughly 57,000 households that received the EV tax credit in 2016, nearly 80% made over $100,000. If these people want to buy an EV, I think they can afford one without asking low and middle income Americans to help pay for it. Compared to keeping the 2012 standards in place, the preferred option in our SAFE proposal would reduce the price of new vehicles by thousands of dollars, which leads directly to my second point. Revising the standards and reducing the price of new vehicles will save lives. Research shows that passengers are more likely to be killed in older vehicles compared to newer ones. According to the NHTSA study, a driver of a vehicle 8 to 11 years old, that's the vehicle, not the driver, is nearly 20% more likely to be fatally injured than the driver of a vehicle that was 3 years old or less. A driver of a vehicle that's 12 to 14 years old is 32% more likely to die in an accident, and a driver of a vehicle that's 15 to 17 years old is 50% more likely to be fatally injured. By revising the standards and reducing the price of new vehicles, we will help Americans purchase newer and safer cars and trucks. We estimate that our proposed revised standards to the SAFE rule could save thousands of lives. Third, we are revising the standards in a manner that will have a negligible impact on the environment compared to the current standards. Here are two important facts that the public needs to know. First, even the most stringent vehicle standards imaginable will have only a minimal impact on global temperatures. According to the Obama administration's 2012 analysis, even a much more stringent version of their rule than the one that they eventually finalized would have only lowered global temperatures by 2/100ths of a degree Celsius by 2100. So it's important to put things in context. We're talking about changes in the hundredths of a degree Celsius by 2100. Here's the second fact. Most automakers cannot comply with the trajectory of the current standards. For model year 2016, domestic passenger vehicle manufacturers paid more than $77 million for non-compliance. And in model year 2017, only 3 large manufacturers complied based on the technology levels of their vehicles alone. Most large manufacturers used banked credits along with technology improvements to maintain compliance. The most recent DOT data on credits and the shortfall between the fleet and the CAFE compliance suggests that this figure may rise dramatically due to the increasing stringency of the Obama standards. For example, the total shortfall in CAFE credits for model year 2018 is the equivalent of almost $1.3 billion, more than 10 times higher than the equivalent shortfall for model year 2011, which was just over $100 million. This begs the question, why keep the standards that automakers can only comply with through credits and paying fees? We believe that the changes are needed and that the SAFE proposal set forth our view of what changes are appropriate. And because our rule would remove certain credits and fees, our standards would have a negligible impact on the environment compared to the current standards. Fourth and finally, revising the standards will help more Americans purchase newer, cleaner, and safer cars. The average age of vehicles on the road today is a record high of 12 years. In 1990, the average age was 8 years. Either consumers cannot afford the price of new vehicles, or they are not interested in purchasing certain types of new vehicles. Either way, the lack of fleet turnover creates a host of problems, the most important of which is passenger safety. By revising the standards, we will reduce the price of new vehicles, and as prices fall, President Trump's vision becomes reality. More Americans will be able to purchase newer, cleaner, and safer vehicles they actually want to buy. The President knows that accelerating fleet turnover is good for the auto industry, it's good for consumers, it's good for public safety, and it's good for the environment. Thank you for your time today and for your attention, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Administrator Wheeler. I would also now like to take this opportunity to invite Congressman from the 1st District of California, Congressman Doug LaMalfa, for your remarks, sir. Thank you.
And thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here today for this subject matter especially. In my real life, I'm a farmer in Northern California, and I'm very in touch with our constituents on what their automotive needs are. And what we're really talking about, the bottom line here, is auto choice. People in this country still like to have choices. And when I saw this Obama-era mandate coming down the line a few years ago, and thinking, how realistic is it by the year 2025, all automobiles in the fleet would have to average 55 miles per gallon. I can't even think of what a 55 mile per gallon vehicle looks like right now, especially for what that means for the average buyer. You know, is that a mom needing to get her kids to school and off to do the other chores, or a dad, or people just that might want to have a vehicle with a little bit of room in it because they got some guys my size, right? So I think that what we're really seeing is that this administration, and I want to be very thankful to Secretary Chow, Administrator Wheeler, Assistant Administrator Itzall, on listening to the people on this situation. California Air Resources Board, for my constituents, they plead with me and my state legislative colleagues to say, can we have some relief from their latest dream they have each month or each 6 months on a new mandate. I have legislation to make it, for example, less costly to buy full-size trucks for people to use in agriculture. If you got it, a truck brought it. Everything you have has been brought by a truck. And so we want to update trucks, have them burn a little cleaner, a little better, but there's a punitive tax, a federal excise tax, anywhere $12,000 to $15,000 on top of all the rest of the tax for buying a new truck to update with. If we want to incentivize it, we need to give people what they need and have the affordability for it. The same thing goes with automobiles. Administrator Wheeler really hit it out of the park from where I was sitting, that this comes down to subsidizing other people into these electric vehicles. And we know, standing alone, electric vehicles do not pay. And the electricity comes from somewhere. It doesn't just magically happen nearby. I have a lot of the power lines running from my district, from hydroelectric plants and other plants, many miles through my rice fields to go to the urban areas so people can feel good about themselves and plugging into their electric car. So the reality is, the better we can make our gasoline-powered vehicles, the more efficient, and the tailpipe is still clean on all these cars, no matter what their size, what their MPG is. So what we're really talking about is we're chasing CO2 numbers here. So the reality is that our manufacturers are making better cars than ever on efficiency, on aerodynamics, and cars that you like to drive. I'm a car enthusiast myself, and one of the manufacturers I'm not very happy with cutting a deal with California, going behind the backs of this administration who's looking out for consumer choice in this country. So at this point, I hope we can keep going straight ahead, and I will support the efforts of Administrator Wheeler and EPA. Never thought I'd be saying that a lot about that, but and Secretary Chow. And right home in my own district, we're just now putting out a 54,000 acre forest fire. If you want to talk about air quality, year after year after year, hundreds of thousands of acres of forest burn in the west. And I realize that's a different building down the street, with USDA and our Forest Service, and they're working on making things better. And also this migratory emissions that come from other areas that affect our state too. So forcing us into our little caves in our little tiny cars is not going to change the situation for my constituents, for Californians, and certainly to have the state of California and the California Air Resources Board dictatorial policies going towards the rest of the 50 states. Again, my people plead for relief from CARB to say, let's put reasonable regulations back in place. So I hope this administration does not give up at all on fighting CARB, and because that's all California seems wants to do is fight us here in Congress and this administration. Every day they think up a new lawsuit, a new thing to come after, as we're just trying to make jobs happen in this country, not in China. All these things have to be manufactured somewhere else to make these electric cars go. Why aren't we mining the materials in this country we need for batteries, for this high-tech apparatus we need across the board? Instead, we expect other countries to supply it to us, supply the manufacturing, supply the raw materials. So we're on the right track because we can do it better, more efficiently, more ecologically soundly in this country than anywhere in the world if we're allowed to do it. So again, my thanks, Administrator Wheeler, Assistant Administrator Itzal, and Secretary Chow, and everybody in this room here today that is being part of this to give us our choices back for our constituents, for what they need, not what they need in Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks, Congressman LaMalfa. That concludes our press event this morning. We remain available to answer any questions you might have. Thank you all very much for joining us this morning. Sure.
Anyone have a question?
Hi, Administrator Wheeler. California has, Chris Knight with Argus Media. So California has gotten four automakers to say they're going to support their rules. How many automakers have told you they're going to support the SAFE rule when it comes out?
Well, they're still waiting to see what the final SAFE numbers look like. Of course, we're talking to all the auto manufacturers, including the four that signed that agreement, although I don't believe there's actually an agreement that's been made public that they've actually signed. I think it's more in theory. But we are, of course, sent a letter to California last week to ask what the legal authority is for this agreement. So we are looking into that aspect. But we expect at the end of the day, when we release the second half of the SAFE proposal, the standards, that all the automakers will take a look at it and see that it's feasible, it's the right thing to do, and I expect everybody will support it. And hopefully the state of California will put politics aside and support it as well.
Hi, Tim Kemma, E&E News, for Administrator Wheeler. President Trump said last night that EPA is going to be issuing some sort of notice of violation against San Francisco over something about water pollution and homelessness. Can you tell us anything more about that?
I can't comment on potential enforcement actions.
Sarah Mock, RFD TV, for Administrator Wheeler. Could you give us an update on the conversations you're having with the White House and the USDA about the renewable fuel standard and the waiver issue that's going on right now?
We're continuing to have very good conversations. Thank you.
Next question.
Administrator Wheeler, Dave Shepardson from Reuters over here. Two-part question. One, can you say definitively now whether the SAFE rule will not be the preferred option, whether it will increase the standards at some amount, whether it's 0.5%, 1%, or 1.5%? And can you also address, by revoking the waiver now as a separate rule, what does that do to the legal strategy? Do you think that speeds up the administration's court review of this issue? And do you think it's feasible that you could see the Supreme Court take action or consider this before the end of a first term?
I'm going to defer to my general counsel on that second half, but now I'm trying to remember the first half of the question. Oh, we're looking at all the options right now. We've not made a final decision yet on what the standards will be. I think I've gone on record saying that the final will not look exactly the same way that we proposed it. We received a lot of comments from a lot of people during the comment period for the SAFE proposal, and we take those comments very seriously. We're taking a look at what it would mean for the program and what makes the best sense, again, to fulfill President Trump's objective of having cleaner, safer cars for the American public that the American public wants to purchase.
Sure. I'm Matt Leopold, EPA General Counsel. I think this is an issue that we propose to take action on, and we're eager to get the opportunity to have this reviewed in the courts, and we're ready to defend our interpretation of the waiver withdrawal along with Department of Transportation's preemption theory, and we're very confident that the courts will review that favorably. So.
Hey, thanks. I'm Steve Bradbury, the Acting Deputy Secretary of Transportation and General Counsel. The legal issues that are addressed in today's, we like to call it the One National Program Rule, Part 1 of the Safe Vehicles Rule, the preemption issues and the waiver revocation are separable from the standards that will be addressed in the rest of the Safe Vehicles Rule later this fall. And these are very, very important. This is a very important first step in achieving one national program. And these legal issues really are the key to achieving what the auto industry and the entire automobile sector has long asked for, which is certainty and clarity on what will those one national standards be and how assured can we be that we will not have to build cars to meet multiple different standards across the country. And so that's what this issue addresses in today's rule. And the fact that we're pulling it out of the larger Safe Vehicles Rule and doing it first, we're ready to go on these determinations. This rule will be able to be challenged in court on its own if California so wishes, for example, and we can accelerate the timetable for getting a definitive final judgment from the courts as to the fact that, as we believe it's very clear, Congress-mandated federal law should control in this area. And once we get those final determinations in court on these focused legal issues, we'll get that certainty for the auto sector and for the entire nation. So it's very important to, we think, to take this first step. Thanks.
We have time for one more question. Is there anyone?
Doug Obey with Inside EPA. A quick question for Administrator Wheeler. I think I understood the first part where you were saying that the standards change would have a negligible environmental impact. I thought I heard you say it would also be good for the environment. Could you clarify how that happens? Thanks.
Sure. Older cars pollute more than newer cars. The average age of the car today on the road is 12 years. It used to be 8 years. By decreasing the cost of the cars, we believe it will increase purchase of new cars, getting older cars off the road, so newer cars will replace them, and those newer cars are better for the environment, they're better for public safety, and they're what the American public wants to purchase. Thank you very much. I have to go to the House Science hearing. Thank you.
Thank you all again very much for joining us today, and have a great morning.